All right, today we are going to tackle one of the toughest, most famous problems in all of philosophy. It comes from the 18th century thinker Immanuel Kant, and it forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. Is it ever okay to lie? Let's just dive right into the scenario.
Okay, so put yourself there, right now. At your front door, a life is on the line, your friend's life. I mean, every single gut instinct is screaming, protect your friend. The obvious answer, the one pretty much all of us would land on, is to lie. Of course you lie. It's a no-brainer, right? Well, not for Kant.
And there it is. Kant's answer is, well, it's completely shocking. He says you must not lie. You have to tell the murderer the truth. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too. That is absolutely insane. How could any sane person argue that's the right thing to do? And that is the mystery we're going to unravel today.
And this is really the core of it all. Kant wasn't some kind of monster. He was one of the most brilliant minds in history. So he must have had a really powerful reason for landing here. To get it, we have to do something kind of weird. We have to completely ignore the consequences. Forget what might happen next. Kant wants us to look only at the act itself.
So, our investigation starts with Kant's biggest idea, this concept of duty. You see, for Kant, morality isn't about making people happy or getting the best results. Nope. It's about following a set of rock-solid moral duties.
Kant is the poster child for a school of thought called deontology. I know, it's a mouthful, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It just means that some actions are just plain right and some are just plain wrong. Period. It doesn't matter if a lie could save the world. For a deontologist, the act of lying itself is what's on trial.
And this brings us to what he means by moral duty. He saw it as this supreme principle, something we follow not because we want to or because it'll lead to something good, but just because it is the right thing to do. It's a duty that floats above our feelings or any specific situation we're in.
Okay, so how are we supposed to know what these absolute duties are? Well, Kant didn't just leave us hanging. He actually gave us a tool, a sort of test you can run on any action. Its fancy name is the categorical imperative, but let's just call it the universal law test. And this test is a surprisingly clear three-step process. So step one, name the rule you're thinking about following. In our case, it's something like, I'll lie when it's necessary to save a friend. Step two, you have to universalize it. Imagine a world where everybody has to follow that rule, no exceptions, like it's a law of physics. And then, step three, you check for glitches. Does this world even work? Or does the rule basically eat itself? Does it self-destruct? All right, we've got our tool. Let's go back to that front door. The murderer is still waiting. It's time to run the test and finally see how Kant got to his crazy-sounding answer.
So let's run the test on lying. Imagine that world where everyone lies whenever it's convenient for them. What happens to just talking to each other? What happens to the whole idea of communication?
And boom, there's the contradiction. See, a lie only works because we all expect people to be telling the truth most of the time. If lying becomes the norm, then trust just evaporates. Words become meaningless. Lying itself stops working because no one believes anything anyway. The rule self-destructs, and that's it. For Kant, that's why lying fails the test. It can never be a universal moral law, and so it's always wrong.
This lays it out perfectly. It shows the two completely different ways of looking at the problem. Most of us, we're natural consequentialists. We look at the consequences, saving a life, and we say, yeah, the lie is totally worth it. But Kant is a pure deontologist. He only looks at the act, lying. And since it fails his universal test, it is always, always forbidden. It doesn't matter how good the outcome might be.
And Kant himself was crystal clear on this. He said truthfulness is a formal duty, no matter how awful the consequences are for you or for someone else. The principle is all that matters. Now, this is so hardcore that even some philosophers who like Kant have tried to find a little wiggle room. They say, well, you don't have to lie, but maybe you could say a misleading truth. You know, like, I saw him at the river an hour ago. It's true, but it's meant to mislead. But for Kant himself, nah. Even that would probably be cheating. Look, it's really easy to just dismiss this all as some wild philosophical thought experiment that has nothing to do with real life. But Kant's challenge isn't really about murderers at the door. It's about what we do every single day. Come on, think about it. The little white lie you tell a friend so you don't hurt their feelings, puffing up your experience just a little on a resume, making up a fake excuse to get out of plans. For Kant, if you run any of these through the universal law test, they all fail for the same reason.
Each one, if universalized, slowly chips away at the very foundation of trust that holds society together.
And that's really the bottom line. For Kant, the principle is more important than the convenience. It doesn't matter if the stakes are life and death or just avoiding an awkward conversation. The moral law doesn't bend. He believed that a rational, moral world absolutely depends on us upholding these duties, especially when it's hard.
So in the end, we're left with Kant's deeply uncomfortable challenge. We might not like his answer to the murderer at the door, but we can't just ignore his logic. Because if we start making exceptions for the small lies, the harmless ones, then where do we draw the line? And who gets to decide? That is the question Kant's Inquiring Murderer leaves for all of us. Thanks for joining this explainer.